What's up, everyone? Welcome to the inaugural Game and Watch episode number 1, where we talk about Nintendo stuff. I am RGT85. I am joined by two members of the Spawncast. First off, we have Josie Woe. Josie, how you doing?
So good. So excited to be here, ready for the launch of the new pod.
You sound very nasally.
I'm super sick, so
Hey, but you showed up to work. Good job.
yep.
And of course, the man that needs no introduction, Nate Drake. Nate the Hate. Nate, how you doing?
I'm doing well. Looking forward to kickstarting this brand new podcast with the two of you and giving our listeners and fans new original content every week moving on from here.
Is this weekly? I didn't realize it was weekly. All right. See, we're learning as we go along here.
I thought it
folks.
was weekly, or is it monthly?
I think it's bi-weekly. I think it's every 2 weeks, maybe. I don't know. See, John hasn't done the best job of informing everyone of everything, or even really talking about this Patreon stuff. But I figure if we shoot a show and we have some content on there, it'll kind of put his ass in gear and force him to put down something about this. So obviously, this isn't going to be the most original episode because A, it's episode 1. We're ironing out the kinks. There's no video. I don't know if they're going to include video and stuff like that. But there was a Nintendo Direct. We're actually filming this on the day of the Nintendo Direct, actually the evening post Nintendo Direct. And, you know, you got to talk about these things. But I think this was a very unique Nintendo Direct because of the fact that a lot of people online, and I don't know if you guys happen to see this, and feel free to chime in, I feel like there was a bit of a split with some people. I feel like this was one of the more divisive Nintendo Directs.
Yeah, I would
Yeah.
agree. It seemed as though it wasn't quite the direct people were expecting from Nintendo, but people were also very happy with what was shown from Nintendo, while other people were hoping for more variety.
Yeah, I think there was one main type of game shown here, really, if you're looking first party wise, and that's just mostly Mario. And so if you're not a huge fan of Mario, which is not a lot of people, but that's I think that's where the split is.
Now, before we get into talking about individual games that we liked and hyping them up, there was sort of a narrative going into this Direct that don't expect anything too crazy. Don't expect like a big Direct per se, and then after seeing the titles, there was some conversation online where some people felt that this was kind of, a bit of a winding down for the Nintendo Switch based on the titles we saw. A lot of, enhanced ports, remakes, and, a 2D Mario game, more Mario ports and stuff like that. Did you get that feeling from this presentation where it was kind of like, good stuff, but obviously they're holding back some of the heavy hitters for the next iteration of whatever console or handheld they do?
To be honest, sort of, but I think it's really cool in this era right now because they can be like random and kind of really creative. Like we saw that with the Mario game, and it just seems like, yeah, they're relying on some of their older games, but I don't like at the same time I think those older games are just have huge cult followings. They're really exciting regardless of really what like the age of them is, and I don't know. I'm just very hyped. I think it's great.
Yeah, I mean, when I viewed this direct, it definitely had that tone of a transition. You can tell that Nintendo is beginning to pivot away from the Switch. They still have some quality original games planned for the hardware, but when you see titles like Luigi's Mansion 2, a title that's not building up to a bigger release, like you can look at Metroid Prime remastered earlier this year and say, well, that's building anticipation for Prime 4. Luigi's Mansion 2 just feels as one of those filler releases that you put in 2024 as the Switch is beginning to wind down and that a successor is just beyond the horizon. And even if you look at, Super Princess Peach, just the general tone was definitely that we're beginning our descent into hospice for this hardware.
Yeah, I agree with that. Like, I loved the presentation personally, and we'll talk about why in just a minute, because somebody gets a victory lap on this podcast here of retribution for hyping me up for this. And then there was something obviously very near and dear to my heart, but I definitely felt that was sort of the general thing. Like Luigi's Mansion Dark Moon kind of solidified it. It's like that's a random thing, like a good thing to port, because obviously, you know, it'll look a hell of a lot better, and it looked great on the 3DS, but it'll obviously look better on the Switch. But it definitely felt, you know what I would say, it was almost like fan service. Like a lot of this stuff definitely felt like fan service. I guess we should talk about like the biggest and most unique title, the end of the presentation, with Super Mario Brothers Wonder. Now, if you know anything about me, which hopefully you do, you know that I've been very critical about a new 2D Mario game, because Nintendo is I shouldn't say always, but in the past decade, when it comes to 2D Mario games, they've been very reserved. It's always been this new Super Mario Brothers style. The first game on the DS back in what, like 06? Like that was unique. That was fine, but they never moved on from that, and it just felt like a total rehash. But when I look at Super Mario Brothers Wonder, even the character sprite of Mario and how his hat like flips up a little bit and you can see his hair, that showed me that they're actually trying something very different with this game. Feel free to chime in.
Yeah, I love the look of this game. I study animation in school, and so the way the character sprites are done, and the way everything kind of works together, and Mario's little in-between animations where he's peeking his head out and stuff, to me it just really looks like they took a lot of care and put a lot of effort into this game. I think it's great that they're being like so creative with it and basically letting Mario go on a whole psychedelic trip through the mushrooms. It just looks phenomenal. I'm very excited.
Yeah, what stood out to me is that the game finally has a return of personality.
Yes.
And when you looked at 2D Mario games dating back to the NES, each new installment had a new personality that was achieved through its aesthetics. And that's what I'm seeing here. New Super Mario Brothers, as you mentioned, became very lazy. It had the same art style. It wasn't very visually exciting. It was originally back on the DS and the Wii. Those were exciting releases. But then when we saw it rehashed on the Wii U, it was just very, oh, this again. And not to dismiss what New Super Mario Bros. U was, it was a fantastic 2D Mario game. The level design is phenomenal. It's just that it was visually unexciting. And when I look at Super Mario Bros. Wonder, it has that excitement back into it. The finer details to the character models, the expressions the characters have on them, just the overall artistic direction of the stage design that we have seen so far. It's exciting. It's appealing. It feels like it's returning to the roots that made 2D Mario games so great in yesteryears and on prior platforms.
Yeah, I like how they sort of showed off like different gameplay styles in there as well, like the wonder stuff, like it transforms into a different world, and like the game kind of shifts a little bit. I think there's gonna be a ton of different change. Like I think they held back a lot of stuff for this game as far as showing things off from it, because all you needed was really a little taste to kind of understand the direction and kind of understand the vibe that they were going for. But I was definitely impressed. I was very skeptical of a new 2D Mario game because I was afraid that they were gonna half-ass it. And that's really what it boiled down to. I didn't buy New Super Mario Brothers U Deluxe. Oh wait, I did buy it. And like I did buy it because I made a video on it, and like I didn't have fun with that game. Like it just felt so boring. It was vanilla. That's what it was. The Mario games had become extremely vanilla. And if you're someone who's older, or maybe even, someone Josie's age who's, played a good bit of Mario games, you would know that the better ones always have a little bit of that, personality showing through.
Yeah, it felt like the new Super Mario Bros. Felt like just super highly corporate produced. They didn't really have anything that was super special. And so with the return of that, I think it's going to get a lot of like new people really excited for it. Something cool that they did was those silhouette areas, and they did that in Donkey Kong Tropical Freeze, and that was like a highly loved like part of that game. And so bringing that into Mario, I think is super great as well. Just like showing different artistic approaches that they're taking to the game.
Young people will make or break the election. My generation needs to turn out to vote.
So we also had a very big announcement, a long time coming, I feel. Super Mario RPG. This
Man.
this was surprising to me. I had heard that there was rumors about it, but I was like, nah, man, I don't think that's gonna go down. And I have to be honest, I said it in my video talking about the direct. I have never played Super Mario RPG.
Whoa, what?
I've never played it.
Not even when it was released on like the Virtual Console, Super NES Classic. None of them.
None of them. I've never even booted the game up. So this
Wow.
to me is very cool because I've heard how great it is, and I've heard people say, how they want a sequel to this, that, and the other. Look, this is going to be, if you have any chance of this game ever getting a sequel, this is going to be the litmus test to see if people give a damn if they speak with their wallet with this. But I loved seeing that. I thought that was absolutely fantastic, a smart idea, and the visual style, once again, to me, that Mario character looked awfully similar to the one that we saw in Super Mario Brothers Wonder, correct? Or was I?
Yeah, I agree. It has a very similar look as what they're taking, and maybe that's the new direction that they're going to take Mario models, moving forward. But I also love how true it stayed to the original vision of what Super Mario RPG was on the Super NES. And the fact that Nintendo and Square Enix could come to an agreement to remake this game is nothing short of just astonishing. And it's a very exciting release for anybody who is, well, our age and remembers the original game 20 plus years ago. And, it seemed as though Josie may have played it on Virtual Console or even on the SNES Classic, because she did say "whoa" to your
I think she was
comment of
just
never playing it.
I think she was just plugging her channel of Josie Whoa.
No, I think it's. I've never played it actually, but
Okay, so what the hell?
I know a lot of. Well, I was being ironic, but I know a lot about about the game because it's so like well known and stuff. But I feel like it's kind of a very like specific cult classic game, and it's super cool that Nintendo dug back in the trenches and picked this one out.
Yeah, I thought that looked absolutely amazing. Honestly, up until that game, I wasn't really feeling the direct. So, like, starting out with Pokemon DLC, like, get out of here, dude. Like, that's cool, but like, I don't know. The detective. Does anyone like Detective Pikachu? Was that?
I was actually
Okay.
kind of excited.
Okay, you're excited, so I'm going to let you speak on it first because I'm going to eviscerate it.
Yeah, well,
Oh really? Oh no. I like the idea of a Pikachu addicted to coffee and you solve mysteries in the Pokemon world. It seems really like stupid but kind of fun. But I'm willing to admit that it's probably bad. So Nate, if you want to destroy it, go ahead.
This was one of the worst looking Switch games I have ever seen.
it's the
This
same
looked-
engine
Yeah,
as
it
Scarlet
does look bad.
Violet.
Is it this? Do you remember when the Citra emulator came out with Detective Pikachu and Pikachu was all flat textured and it had no shadows?
Yes.
This looks like a 3DS game running on an emulator. It looks terrible. There's no reason this game cannot look like Pokemon Snap.
Well, I mean, one one was made by Bandai Namco, who knows how to make a modern looking game, and one wasn't. Yeah, like it did nothing for me. Like, hey, I'm Pikachu. I like coffee. You want to go solve some crimes? It's like, bro, like, I get it. Maybe there's people out there because the problem with Pokemon fans is, not to be mean, but maybe I will be a little bit mean. It's kind of cultish. There is definitely a cultish aspect to them where they just buy anything. Like, it doesn't matter what it is, if it's any good or not. They just buy it. So, that's a whole topic for another day. But like, that's just something that if you're putting out minimal effort
Yeah.
and people are still buying it and you're making money, like, you don't care. You're not going to try really hard.
And that's the thing with this release. It could be great in terms of storytelling, gameplay. There's just no excuse for the game to look this poorly on the Switch. I mean, I've seen people compare it to a PlayStation 2 game, and I can't say it's hyperbole because
No.
Pikachu is a flat texture. There's no shadows in this game. I don't understand why this game took the entire generation to be developed. It feels as though this game was a 3DS game that they kind of shelved, and then in the last couple of years, they said, "Can we port it over to the Switch?" Yeah, we can. And that's what we got.
Yeah, the more I see different Pokemon games and stuff, the more I realize that Game Freak just shouldn't be the developers. They got to give this to someone else.
Or ask for help. Like there's nothing
Yeah.
there's nothing wrong with asking for help when you clearly need it. Like this is like Game Freak is like the crackhead outside of the 7-Eleven. Like they need help. And you know, they should accept it at this point because there's some issues going on there. We did see some games that we were aware of that we have seen previously. Sonic Superstars made another appearance here with some new gameplay footage. 2D games. All of a sudden, some of my most hyped games are 2D games. Sonic Superstars, Prince of Persia, and now Super Mario Brothers Wonder. But what are we thinking about Sonic Superstars? Because obviously, you know, 2D Sonic games are usually really good, but the Sonic franchise itself kind of has a negative stigma about it. But, you know, Frontiers helped it a little bit. But what are we thinking about this game?
I have previously had zero interest in Sonic at all. I didn't even care about Frontiers, but this I kind of like because I like the 2D aspect of it. I mean, Sonic Mania I think is really good, but other than that, I have not cared about the Sonic franchise in the slightest. And so the fact that this is going back to the roots, it looks pretty good, and the fact that you can play it co-op is pretty cool to me.
My only hesitation with this game is that it looks like it lacks momentum. And I know they said they ported over the Mania physics engine and everything, but whenever I see the footage, it doesn't look fast. And maybe it's just a perception of watching the trailer, and maybe it will feel as though it is quicker when I'm playing it. But right now, it just looks like a slow Sonic game, and hopefully that isn't the case because 2D Sonic games are always quality, and it would be great for them to finally deliver a high quality 2D Sonic game again. But it just comes back down to that co-developer, which is Azrest, who did Balan Wonderworld.
Good
And
lord.
that brings me a little bit of, fear that it may just be another mediocre Sonic game.
And I mean that's fair, but once again, much like Pokemon fans, Sonic the Hedgehog fans are cultists, and I'm a part of the cult. I will completely admit that. I think Sonic Forces isn't a bad game. I play anything Sonic, so I'm super stoked for this game. There was a lot of other stuff. Tell me some of your highlights from this event. We'll start with Josie. What were a game or two that stood out for you and why?
They're pretty much just the main ones. Like I really liked the tease of Super Princess Peach I think is like super intriguing. I'm very excited for what that possibly could be. And then I'm big on Pikmin. I don't know if anyone else in this podcast is, but the fact that they're bringing over 1 and 2 was also super huge for me because I haven't played those games, but I loved 3. And I have dabbled in them, on Dolphin, but I haven't beaten them. Yeah. But I haven't beaten them or really gotten anywhere far. So I think by bringing them over the Switch, it'll make it a lot more accessible. Plus, having the entire franchise on the Switch now is really, really cool to people trying to get into the franchise.
Yeah, those.
Yeah,
I was gonna say.
I'll echo Pikmin.
Yeah,
I'll echo that.
I might even say that because I'm not gonna buy it on day one. But whenever it goes down to $41.99, which will be the lowest it ever goes to, I might pick it up then. I kind of liked what I saw from that game. I've never been a big fan of Pikmin. It's just never done anything for me.
See, I like Pikmin 1. Pikmin 2, I never really played that much when it came back, on the GameCube back in the day. And then it came to the Wii, but by then I was kind of disinterested in Pikmin. So I definitely have interest in replaying Pikmin 1 right now. Probably get the physical copy that comes out in September instead of going digital at this point. Another game that I was glad to finally see released because it finally get you off my back is The Dark Knight.
Oh God, I was so
Batman.
happy. I was so happy. Josie, have you played any of the Arkham games?
I've actually played all of them with my brother.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
yeah.
Yes, I'm very excited for this. Nate had told me long ago that this was happening. It's been literally years I've been asking, where is my Batman?
Yeah. It's
Where
been
is
at
my
least
Batman?
18 months.
At least 18 months. But I mean, you know, a lot of people, even when this was a rumor, a lot of people thought that, you know, oh, is Arkham Knight going to be on there? Because obviously that was a PlayStation 4, Xbox One game. And it does appear that Arkham Knight is in its full capacity on this trilogy of the games. No Arkham Origins. Why don't people... Somebody's going to have to answer this for me. What's the beef with Arkham Origins? Because I don't think it's a bad game.
I actually thoroughly enjoy Arkham Origins. I think the only reason it continues to elude this release is that it's not a Rocksteady game, and this is the Rocksteady trilogy.
Ah, okay. Because like I love the ending scene of Arkham Origins is freaking fantastic. But yes, I am very excited for this. Arkham City is one of my favorite video games. Period. Not the biggest fan of Arkham Knight because the Batmobile stuff. I don't know. It felt like way too tacked on for me. It didn't feel very well done, but I am super excited for this. This is going to be awesome. I would say
Bernie Moreno would overturn the will of Ohio voters with a national ban on abortion, with no exceptions for rape or incest.
Absolute pro-life, no.
my personal exciting announcement was I was slightly vindicated as well, because when the Metal Gear Solid collection was announced, I made a video proclaiming that I felt it was coming to the Switch. Some people doubted that. And then we got, when I heard the, I was like, oh my God. And, you know, they've added in more stuff. Now, Josie, have you played any Metal Gear?
No, not a single one.
You are in for a treat, my friend. Actually, you're not, because they probably haven't aged all that great for modern players. At least play 3. But no. So you're getting the 3 main games, 1, 2, and 3. I am curious to see if it's, because they slightly tweak some things with Metal Gear Solid. If you remember, they got rid of the name diazepam for the sedative drug that you use when you're sniping, because that's an actual drug. They changed it to pentazamine. And they also, in Twin Snakes, they changed Mei Ling's voice. They made her sound like more Western, I guess, because she didn't sound that way. She sounded very Oriental in the original version of the game. So I'll be curious to see what's going on with that. But beyond that, you get the VR missions for Metal Gear Solid 1. You get Metal Gear and Metal Gear 2 Solid Snake, which were MSX home computer titles. And today they also announced, and this was actually very surprising, but I also feel like it's a big FU to Kojima, that Metal Gear NES and Metal Gear Snake's Revenge NES are also going to be a part of this collection. Now, if you know anything about the history of Metal Gear, you'll know that Kojima had nothing to do with those games. He didn't even know that they were happening, and then they happened, and then they did a sequel, and he had no freaking idea about that either until like it was out. So that was kind of funny to me. There's going to be the digital novel, 2 versions of the digital novel. There's like strategy guides and stuff that they're putting in there. Like, this actually feels like, I don't want to give them too much credit, but it actually feels like Konami is making an effort here. This is the most effort, because you could say, oh, well, what about the Castlevania and Contra stuff? That was other companies doing it. Like, they just pretty much licensed out that stuff. This actually feels like Konami themselves is the one doing it. They're the ones making the merch. They're the ones that are promoting it. It's all themselves. So that I was so happy to see that.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be great to replay Metal Gear Solid 2 and 3, especially in handheld, because, you know, we both played it on the Vita. And now a whole new audience will get that opportunity to play these 2 fantastic PlayStation 2 games in portable mode. And as long as performance holds up, which it should, it's based on the Blue Point versions of the game that came out on the Xbox 360, PS3, and everything. So there's no reason the game shouldn't be rock solid on the Switch. This is a fantastic release. I mean, unfortunately, we did learn that physical copy essentially has nothing on it.
Yeah, that's my video for tomorrow. Definitely, some people are outraged about that, but at this point, like, it shouldn't be that big of a surprise to you. Like, do you think the Batman stuff's not going to be all on the cartridge? You might get Asylum on there if you're lucky, but that's not going to be all on the cartridge. They might even do a physical release for that, because you know, when you look at the file sizes of this stuff, Konami doesn't. They're not compressing anything here. They're just like throwing it. It's crazy, these file sizes, and they obviously, like, I'm still gonna buy it physically. I just want it for the collection. But I mean, I'll play them digitally.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I can get a review copy of it. But yes, that was a huge and exciting announcement for me.
I have a question about Metal Gear.
Go on.
Who is the main character? It's not Snake.
No, it is Snake. It's Solid. Well, I mean, Metal Gear Solid 1, you play as Solid Snake. Metal Gear Solid 2, you start out as Solid Snake, and then you play as someone else. Metal Gear Solid 3, you play as Big Boss, who is
the original Snake.
The original Snake.
Okay. Was I not lit up on the Spawncast for saying that I know who it is because of Snake? And you guys were like, he's not even in it.
Wait, what?
This is why I remember this question, because I said it was a whole thing, but I was just wondering.
But no, we were talking about Metal Gear Solid 3, I think.
Oh, and that's the one. It's not Snake.
Right, it's Big Boss.
Yeah.
Wow.
The original Snake.
Yeah, Snake is a clone of Big Boss.
Les Enfants Terribles, the three brothers of terribleness.
Wow, this is a lot of lore.
No.
There is.
It's crazy, the amount of lore. And you also have to play the MSX games, because all of that is canon. Like the NES, the reason why the NES stuff is interesting is because, well, the first game is kind of it's based on a canon game. So the MSX version, which is a Japanese home computer, had Metal Gear. And Konami, the Western part of Konami, decided to bring it over. So Kojima didn't know that was happening. And they changed some stuff to make it a little bit, you know, obviously for the limitations of the NES, because the MSX was a stronger system. But beyond that, just because of the fact that they just wanted to change some things up. Snake's Revenge, which is also in this collection, has nothing to do with it. Absolutely nothing to do with it. It's not even acknowledged. Like, at least Metal Gear NES, it kind of gets acknowledged, but Snake's Revenge doesn't. So that's kind of why it's like a big FU to Kojima. But I definitely feel... Go ahead.
So if I wanted to play these games for the first time, like, what would I start with?
Well, see, here's the thing.
Man. I mean, 99% of people started with Metal Gear Solid on the PlayStation 1.
But that game is extremely dated. It's still a great game, don't get me wrong. But you would have to be able to... But the PS1 is one of the worst consoles as far as revisiting the games, or even visiting the games for the first time, because that was the first generation of 3D. At least with the Nintendo, like, you had these big chunky polygons, and so like it kind of worked for most of the 3D stuff if it wasn't fog based. But with PlayStation, like, they were trying to just like brute force stuff, and because of that, it's not the best looking game. It's gonna feel very jank and kind of weird, but if you can stick with it, it's fantastic. But I definitely think that's kind of the place to start as well, just because like the MSX games, they're fun, but unless you're just like a hardcore Metal Gear fan, or you're just a hardcore retro gamer fan, you could just read a synopsis of the stories that happen within those games, because really the series didn't get into the limelight until it was Metal Gear Solid.
Right. And not to stay on this topic for too long, but did you see the leak that found controller prompts for Metal Gear Solid 4, Peace Walker, and Metal Gear Solid 5 for potentially the Metal Gear Solid Collection Part 2?
Oh my. Oh my. How would they do Metal Gear Solid 4 though?
I don't care. I just want it on modern platforms.
I know. I've been Hacker Man over here. I've been playing it on my emulator on my computer. I'm like halfway through the game. It's such a good game. It still holds up amazing. It still looks great. It still plays great. Like, that's one of the best games. I don't care. if you get addicted to the story of Metal Gear Solid 4 is just the icing on the cake, and the series should have ended there because God Almighty did they get weird.
That game was pure fan service.
Dude, it was like the characters that you would never think were coming back. Like, hey, look, I'm back. It's like, what? What are you doing here?
Hey, it's you.
It's like,
we're going back to this location. Cool.
Yeah,
I can't wait. That game, it was carny as hell, but man, did I love it.
Yeah, I had so many memories of playing online. All right, this isn't the Metal Gear cast though. I do want to spotlight one more game, and then you guys can talk about something. Penny's Big Breakaway.
That's great.
This is the 3D platformer from the Sonic Mania team, and wow, this looked like a 2D Sega platformer from back in the day made into like a 3D game.
Yep.
Like the color schemes and stuff, it definitely felt like Rystar, Tempo, old Sonic games that had those bright colors. I thought this game looked very, very cool and has a lot of potential with a 2024 release.
I do too. I think it could be a very fun, kind of random, quirky platformer. I'm wondering, do you think that it's gonna be full price? Probably not, right?
That's a good question. I don't know. What do you think, Nate?
I mean, given the scope of the game, I could see this coming in at, a full $60, but I mean, who's publishing it? It's
game is developed by Private Division.
I think it has a really good chance of selling well if they price it right. But I think $60, I don't know if this game is gonna do super well.
As a new IP, yeah, because it is, a new IP. Nobody really has ever heard. I mean, you know about Christian Whitehead because he's been around for so long. What other games has Private Division published?
They published The Outer Worlds.
Oh.
Okay. So they've done Ollie World. They've done Hades. They've done. So they haven't done much. They've only done, it looks like, a handful of games, honestly. But, Ollie World, Hades, those were budget titles. Those weren't full prices. So, I think it depends. Just kind of, how they position it, how they market it, and sort of what people are willing to pay for it. I'm sure they'll do some market research there. Anything else that stood out for anyone? I feel like I might be missing something. Oh, Dragon Quest Monsters. I liked this. I was a fan of the DS game, and this was good to see. It's like if Game Freak had talent, it would probably look something like this game.
Oh man, Game Freak is getting roasted in this episode.
They're not talented in terms of visuals. But no, I was definitely I like this. This will be something I will play. I like kind of Pokemon-esque games when they actually look like video games, proper games. So this to me looked really good. Definitely something very cool and surprising. I would say it was a bit surprising as well because once again, I know there was predictions out there. I believe, Nate, you were talking about it on your thing, but
yes.
you never know. Predictions are great, but there's always that chance that something could change and then whatever. But definitely very cool to see that.
Yeah, one of the other games I was very happy to finally see be revealed, and something I had talked about a week ago when Square Enix had leaked the logo for the game, was Star Ocean 2.
Oh my God.
The visual direction of the game is just amazing. I love the scope and ambition they're doing with this project, and it was almost like the evolution of HD 2D. When I saw the 3D environments with the 2D pixel art for the characters, I was just looking at saying, wow, Square Enix, you just keep making these HD2 games better. And Star Ocean 2 getting respect is so justly justified for the franchise, because Star Ocean sucks now.
Oh yeah,
but they used to be good, and Star Ocean 2 is one of the best entries to the series.
What is this game? Is this from the SNES era or?
New Aveeno Daily Moisturizing Cream is clinically proven to moisturize for 48 hours.
New Mr. Clean Ultra Foamy Magic Eraser.
It was, I believe it was SNES and PS1.
Yeah, so I played the Star Ocean on PS1 back in the day, the first one that came out on there. And I liked it for sure, but I also don't remember a lot of it, just kind of retrospectively remembering. But yeah, that visual style, that's the move right there. That looked absolutely gorgeous. Because the thing nowadays is, a lot of these games are going for that hyper realistic style, and they kind of blend together. Like look at a PlayStation or an Xbox presentation, not discounting any of those games, but there's kind of a template: medieval, outer space, and it's like, oh, all these games are sort of blending together. But then you have this, which is just the polar opposite of what the trends are, the polar opposite of what the industry is kind of gravitating towards with these huge development cycles for these ultra realistic games. And it becomes unique. It comes stand out. Like that was a standout title during this presentation. It's also available on the PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5. Sorry, Xboxers, you miss out yet again. I guess that Square Enix and Microsoft beef still goes on. But yeah, awesome looking game.
Is this one getting a physical? Do we know?
They're doing a collector's edition that's like $200 as well.
Holy moly! Right.
And it's like because it's a Square Enix exclusive one, so the shipping is also ridiculous. If you bought the Pixel Remasters physical,
man.
that shipping was ridiculous for just
yeah.
one game.
I had the Pixel Remastered Collector's Edition pre-ordered. And I was like, I can't do this. The shipping was like $50.
Jesus.
So I think it was priced at what, like $250, and
Yeah.
with shipping, it was taken at well over $300. I was like, I'm not gonna spend $300 on this game. I'm sorry,
Dude, even the standard edition was kind of high just for like a single game. It's like, what the hell, man? And it came in like a crappy bubble mail envelope, because I remember getting it and I was like, is this something I bought off of eBay? And I was like, no, it was that. And I was like, you couldn't give me a box, like a standard little nice box? Like, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, like the standard edition, I think the shipping was $25.
Yeah, something crazy. It's I don't
ridiculous.
even know why I have it. I'm not playing them. It's sealed. I'm not gonna play them anytime soon. I'm playing them.
Resale value.
Yeah, I guess. But I don't know. I don't really care about that. So overall, if we had to give this Nintendo Direct a letter grade, and we'll start out with Josie, what would you give this on A to F scale? You could do pluses and minuses should you choose to do such.
Okay, I'm gonna give it a flat A. I think it was really, really good. I think it just appealed to me in every way because I'm huge on Mario, and so I got like all this Mario stuff and like a bunch of new experiences that not necessarily that they're new games, but for me they're new experiences like Mario RPG that I've never played. And I just like the insight to look into the future of Nintendo as well with the Princess Peach and Luigi's Mansion, and then the Pikmin stuff. It was just like, it just felt very catered. So A for me.
Nate?
You know, it's really tough for me to think of a letter grade for this Direct, because if I view it as strictly a Nintendo fan, and as that, a Mario fan, it definitely delivered on that front. If I go into it expecting a little more variety from Nintendo's own output, there was very little here outside of Mario. So you could say, it failed on that. But if I look at the third-party variety, you had Sonic, Metal Gear Solid, Star Ocean. There was some decent variety there. Not a lot in terms of brand new announcements. Star Ocean 2 was a new announcement. But, just as a Nintendo fan, I'd probably come in with a strong B+.
I'm going to go out on a limb. And you know what? I was going to say A-, but I'm going to go with Josie. I'm going to go with a solid A. Because much like she felt it was catered to her, I got Mario, Sonic, Batman, and Metal Gear Solid in one presentation. And I don't care that, some of these are multi-platform games. Like that's cool. Some of these are older games. Older games to me doesn't mean a bad thing, because a lot of these older games are a hell of a lot better than these newer games are. And that's why they're being re-released. But just the presentation, like there was stuff I didn't care about. Fae Farm, you know, the weird cozy Fortnite looking game that you go out. Like I don't
That
care.
looks bad.
I don't care about these games. The Splatfest. What's your favorite ice cream? Like you sound like
Strawberry.
Herbert the pervert there. Like, you want to get some ice cream?
Jeez.
Like it's weird. But then I feel like there was, unless you're like a Metroid fan, there was like something for everyone, because there was a ton of RPGs, there was a ton of action games, there's a ton of, you know, updates on games we knew about and stuff. I'm gonna go with an A, and you could call me, and it's not even necessarily because of the Nintendo stuff. The Nintendo stuff was very cool. Super Mario RPG, Super Mario Brothers Wonder, very cool stuff. But the Sonic, the Metal Gear, the Batman, like those are franchises I talk about all the time. So if you're gonna call me anything, call me a third party whore. And I mean, I guess the shoe fits with that. So
A little bit.
I do feel like we could finally close the discussion on a 2023 release of a successor, though, which is
Yeah.
that's
Yeah,
got
absolutely not.
shout outs to all the Nintendo channels out there. You're up shit's creek right now, because we pretty much know everything that's going to happen this year. So you're going to have to actually review and play games instead of just talking about them. Does anyone else notice that? Is it just me? I don't know. All right. So I guess this is good enough for a first episode. We're at the 40-minute mark. Any final things we want to say before we go off?
I had a good time. This was cool. I like talking about Nintendo. I talk a lot more about this stuff than Xbox and PlayStation because I know more, so it's a good time.
Yeah, I mean, this was a good first episode. We'll still iron out things. We'll get our footing. And, you know, I think a Direct is a good launch pad for a first episode. And, you know, Nintendo had the Direct that they needed to have at the moment. You had tons of people saying, there's no more games after Zelda. Pikmin 4 is going to be the last big Switch game. And that type of take and opinion was always absurd. Nintendo came out and said, whoa, calm down. We have a lot more coming this year. And you know what? There's still a couple of gaps in the calendar year right now. And Nintendo always likes to have another Direct in the second half of the year. So maybe we still get another release this year. Maybe they continue to do the GameCube Shadow Drop type initiative that they've introduced way back in February. Did it again today. So could still have some releases from Nintendo as the year continues. But, you know, good show. Good way for Nintendo to silence all those doubters saying no more heavy hitters. You dropped a 2D Mario game. It's going to sell 10, 15 million copies, potentially this fiscal year. And, you know, definitely something to look forward to if you're a Nintendo fan for the duration of the calendar year.
I actually fully agree with you with you know, once is as an anomaly, or once is a coincidence, twice there's a pattern. And both of these presentations, they talked about, you know, they did these stealth drops of GameCube games, of Metroid Prime Remastered and now Pikmin 1 and 2. I could definitely see something, you know, because a lot of people were expecting some maybe Tears of the Kingdom DLC at this event. Way too soon for it. But if we're talking about the September Direct, well, you say, you know, hey, here's some Tears of the Kingdom DLC coming in November or December or something like that. And by the way, now available on the Nintendo Switch eShop, Twilight Princess and Wind Waker. There's a physical edition coming out in like 2 months. Like, I definitely think there's a precedent set now, to almost to the point of where I'm expecting there to be some GameCube stuff at this event, just nonchalantly talked about and then dropped. Like, I think, and obviously, you know, in a year or two, that's not going to be the case. But I feel like for 2023, that's definitely something, a bit of a focus.
Yeah, they're like our version of the Smash reveals. New thing.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, and especially, you know, we go into September, let's just say in a hypothetical scenario, we get a Metroid Prime 4 trailer. What better time to shadow drop Metroid Prime 2?
Exactly.
Right.
You know, like, now there's so many permutations of how Nintendo could approach this, and if you have that hype and anticipation going into the shows, it's really exciting. And, you know, maybe a topic in a future episode where we could explore, why is Nintendo doing these shadow drops and releasing the physical versions 2 to 3 months later?
That's an interesting topic. Maybe that will be our next topic, which could be next week according to Jose, or 2 weeks according to me. I don't know. We'll have to add it on. But definitely thank you guys for tuning in to this inaugural episode of Game and Watch. Why do I feel like it was called Game and
Game
Talk?
and Talk.
Game and Talk. This is Game and Talk, episode 1. And yeah, thank you for hanging out with us. Thank you for supporting the Patreon. Hopefully John has officially launched this by the time you're listening to this episode, or else there's going to be like 3 people listening to this. And to those 3 people, thank you very much. We'll catch you guys on the next episode.
I like it. It's mine. The prices blow my mind. I feel so rich. I feel like a billionaire. I'm shopping like a billionaire. I'm shopping like a billionaire. I'm shopping like a billionaire. I get it straight from the markets. I'm shopping like a billionaire.
Download the Temu app and shop like a billionaire.
Good Lord.
Welcome to the second episode of Game and Talk podcast, the #1 podcast on the internet for all things Nintendo related. All the other ones suck. Yeah, I said it. I am RGT85, joined as always by Josie Woe. Josie, how we doing?
So good. So excited to be back for another episode.
And we have Nate the Hate with us. Nate, how you feeling?
I'm feeling hot, sticky, and very humid.
You're hot, sticky, sweet from your head down to your feet. A little Def Leppard there for the 40-plus-year-old crowd listening.
Which is all of probably 2 people.
So, I mean, that's all that listens to it anyways. So we have a show lined up tonight. Obviously, there's been a lot of talk about Switch 2 dev kits, so we're going to cover that. But we are going to start out with something that's a new segment that's actually an old segment from the Spawncast, where we talk about what games we have been playing lately, just because, hey, got to fill up the time somehow. So I'll start things off because Josie's going to go last because it'll kind of segue into something. I've been playing a lot of AEW Fight Forever on my Switch. I'm already like 35, 40 hours into it. Finding out more of the little nuances of the game. There's actually a lot of moves that are kind of like hidden and aren't described. I mean, like I said in my review, it's an enjoyable game. I have fun with it, but if people don't like it, I can understand it. Like if you didn't grow up playing the N64 wrestling games and you don't have that sort of nostalgia, it kind of misses the mark comparative to what the WWE games are. But I think it's a solid foundation that they are going to build upon in time. I have good faith to believe that they're going to be adding more stuff, aka I know they're going to be adding in more stuff. So over time, the game will progress, but I guess a starting out effort, you know, it's decent, and they really capture the essence of all of the wrestlers, because if you know anything about AEW, a lot of the wrestlers have their own sort of unique style, have their own sort of unique moves that you wouldn't necessarily see on a WWE style of program. And I think they really nailed that. It seems like a lot of focus went into that. So that's a positive for me. But, you know, it's a fun game. Nate, what have you been playing?
I have been playing a lot of Final Fantasy 16. I am thoroughly enjoying the game very much right now. I'm nearing the end. I believe I am right at the final boss, but there's a lot of side missions that the game throws at you at the sequence. So I'm kind of doing the side quests and fleshing out the stories of a lot of the secondary characters that the game has. But I am really enjoying it, and I actually think, Sean, you would enjoy the game a lot because the boss battles feel like something out of God of War 3, and I know you love that game.
Yeah, I mean, I'm interested in it, but it's like, I know it's kind of a longer game, so it's like, why would I buy it right now at $60 or $70, whatever the hell it is, and then, you know, play it in chunks, whereas I'd rather have an open space to do it, and that's when it'll be like Black Friday for like 30 or 40 bucks. Like once it gets down to that, I'll definitely buy it. Do you think that it's too easy? I know some people on the internets are saying that it was too easy of an experience.
It is simple in terms of like the combat. You are a very powerful character, but I feel as though it's kind of ingrained in the narrative because your character of Clive is a certified badass. He's powerful, so he should be making little work of some of these enemies. And you could argue that some of the boss battles may be a little streamlined, if not scripted, to the point where you're not going to lose. And that's a fair criticism to make. But there are definitely some battles in the game that are challenging, that will push you maybe to your limits. You may die once or twice in the game, but generally you're going to go through the game without dying. You run across potions very, very abundantly. Your characters that aren't directly in your party, but they are supporting you in battle, will toss potions at you fairly frequently as well. So you're never really in risk of losing your HP during a battle. But I think that's part of the fun, where it is more in line with that action RPG opposed to the action turn-based RPGs like, Final Fantasy VII Remake, where you're just out there, you're annihilating enemies with fast-paced combat, pulling off awesome combos, mixing together the icon abilities, because you can customize them. We're trying just to create that ultimate mix of how can you stagger an enemy quick and inflict the most damage. I mean, at this point, I'm inflicting 75,000 points of damage when I stagger an enemy and essentially killing them in less than a minute. But there are like S-ranked hunts in the game where you're fighting badass creatures that will push you, and you have to kind of figure out a little bit of strategy of how you want to approach it. So yes, it is easy. I don't necessarily feel as though that's a negative for this game.
Do you think that it's too different though? Because that's another thing that a lot of people are saying, that it's too different comparative to as a mainline game. Because there's obviously been offshoot Final Fantasy games that have been completely different than the mainline games, but that's sort of another thing that a lot of people are saying online, that it's just way too different to be a numbered entry in the Final Fantasy series.
I think it would depend on your familiarity with the Final Fantasy franchise as a whole, and depending on where you were introduced to the series. A lot of people, especially our generation, likely played Final Fantasy VII as their first game. And the game is very different from, Final Fantasy 7, 8, and 9. It's more harkened to, I don't want to say the original trilogy, but maybe closer to like the Final Fantasy 4, 5, and 6. I mean, it still has the crystals. It's a very political game. Yeah, you have, a god seeking all power and stuff, which is kind of a standard in the Final Fantasy games. But I think it has a lot of the core elements that make Final Fantasy. And it feels as though people are just really using the combat system to say, oh, this isn't a Final Fantasy game in that tried and true way. But Final Fantasy has evolved a lot since the first entry. And I've seen a lot of people say, go back to turn-based. Final Fantasy hasn't been a true turn-based RPG since maybe the first 3 or 4 entries, because then it made a shift to the action turn-based. And an action turn-based isn't traditional turn-based. You're not just waiting your turn. You can alter how you're going to approach that. So I feel this is just a natural evolution for the franchise, and we've seen this now several times, be it Final Fantasy 6, 10, 12, 13. This is just how a franchise has to grow to cater to a new audience, and I think 16 caters to what the modern gamer would want from an RPG. And, we still have Final Fantasy VII Remake that kind of mix and matches combat systems a little bit. So if that's more your style, you can play Rebirth in, about 6 to 8 months likely, and enjoy that game. But I think 16 has a lot there going for it that Final Fantasy fans can thoroughly enjoy and will enjoy if they give the game a chance.
But Nintendo Switch fans will not enjoy that game because it's not on the platform. Josie, well, what have you been playing?
I have been playing a lot of the Nintendo Switch, and sadly, I have experienced a lot of everybody's 1-2 Switch.
What is wrong with you?
Yeah, no, it was a bad call. The thing is I was pretty optimistic because I was like, why would they make a sequel and make it bad? But they did exactly that, and it's literally like a repeat of 1-2 Switch with less mini games, and it's just super poorly executed. So I think it could be sort of fun if you have a big group, but unfortunately I didn't want to lose all of my friends, so I just played it with 2 of them, and it was just kind of boring. Like, the games are very simple, they're very easy, but at the same time, it's not something you can like get into a flow of doing like Mario Party, where it's consistent, or Mario Kart, where everybody knows what to do. It's like a ever-changing game where it's always like everybody has to be locked in. And a lot of times when you're hanging out with big groups, I feel like it's very difficult to get everyone into doing the same specific thing. And yeah, it's very, very similar to 1-2 Switch. I don't recommend getting the game.
Did you try any online stuff?
I didn't really touch the online yet. I am thinking about it, but the only thing I know about the online is really that you can make your profile pick whatever you want, which is pretty wild. But
I'll be using a penis if we play online. Not mine.
Good
But what I'll do
Lord.
is I'll have 2 eyes and then a mustache on it too. So that way you're like, is it? Isn't it? It could be a worm or something like that.
wow, that is absolutely crazy.
It could be a worm. How thin is this thing?
Ooh, I mean, there's some thick worms out there, sir. I said it wasn't going to be mine. I'm not giving that away for
Yeah.
free. So
That's on the Patreon.
right, exactly. The moment, I mean, the quick turnaround time, the lack of any real promotion, the fact that they had a Nintendo Direct after announcing it and still didn't show off anything. Like, I guess I don't understand. Like, there's been so many games that we know of that have been scratched. You know what I'm saying? That you look at them and you're like, yeah, okay, no, this isn't going to do it. But this somehow made it through. They were like, you know what? We got to get this out. Like,
People will love it.
Yeah, like, I don't understand it. And there was a lot of turmoil with the development of the game, correct, Nate? Or alleged turmoil, I should say.
Yeah, when the game went through testing, it was very poorly received, where I believe it had the nickname of being horseshit. And that kind of led to Nintendo saying, what are we going to do with this game? So there was a lot of discussion whether or not it would be a retail release. Maybe it would be something that they would give as an NSO perk. But then they thought, could this potentially hurt NSO if we give this terrible game away as a perk? And ultimately, yeah, we ended up getting a budget retail release. And, watch the game go on to sell 5 million copies because it's a Nintendo published game. People don't know what they're buying. They assume it is quality. It didn't have any launch day reviews, so Nintendo definitely tried to just rush this out the door and hope that people picked it up day one blind. And we'll probably have a Patreon episode of us playing everybody 1-2 Switch, and the chaos that will ensue should be quite delightful.
I will say, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I will say that, like, playing it with my friends and stuff, it was sort of fun because, like, we would make jokes about it, but it was not talking positively about the game. It was always, like, making jokes about how garbage the game is. It's just, I will say that I do appreciate that it's $3 because at least Nintendo didn't decide, hey, $50 one more time, but...
When I heard Bernie Moreno got taken to court for gender discrimination, when he belittled an employee for being a single mom, and then firing her when she complained. As a working mom, I had to speak out. Ohio deserves better than Bernie Moreno.
I would not even pay that for it. Maybe if it goes on sale for $10, but...
I will say, it's times like this where personally I miss Nintendo Minute because I would have loved to have seen them hawk this piece of shit. But yeah, so that's what we've been playing. We're moving on. We have our main topic, and oh boy, is it a doozy! Because if you've been anywhere on the frickin' internet, you're seeing it pop up on websites, and all your favorite YouTubers are talking about it. Some in a realistic manner, most in a non-realistic manner. But there's rumors out there of a Nintendo Switch 2 development kit and now a backdoor portal for developers on the Nintendo website. So first we'll talk about the development kit because that's kind of the progress of this story. So a Twitter user by the name of Nash Weedle tweeted out some information that he had heard that a Spaniard, would that be Spanish?
Spanish.
Yeah, but when you say Spanish, I think people think of like the language. A video game developer in Spain, there we go, had gotten their hands on a Nintendo Switch development kit. Now, who is Nash Weedle? he is someone that said Metroid Dread was being moved, or Metroid Dread was being created for the Nintendo Switch back in 2020. And of course, that did become a reality, but we'll circle back to that point in just a minute. And so now people are listening to what this person says. They are based in the country of Spain as well. So process of elimination led people to believe that this was another Mercury Steam production, because Mercury Steam, of course, is the company that made Metroid Dread for the Nintendo Switch, working directly with Nintendo. And guess what? They're located in Spain. So people think that there might be some sort of connection there. And then it pretty much just snowballed out of control from there. So I guess we'll start with this and then move on to the second piece of information. But based on this information, do we think that there is indeed a development kit at Mercury Steam right now? And if we say yes, what does it mean? If we say no, what does it mean?
I don't think it's out of the question, because obviously Nintendo's working on something new, and it would make sense that they would try to get their more close developers like Mercury Steam, who's developed a lot of the 2D Metroids and stuff, on board quickly and try to get that dev kit out to them as fast as possible. I also don't really think that the Nintendo Switch 2 is coming out until 2025. It's just a personal opinion. And so I totally think that this could easily just be a stupid rumor that doesn't really matter. And at the baseline, it's not going to affect us for multiple years.
Good answer. Good answer. I'm kind of that mindset as well. I'm kind of laying the table down for Nate here, because he'll obviously have a lot to say because he hasn't said a lot about it yet. But my mindset is very similar to that. I mean, could it be? Maybe. Does it matter right now? Not really, because you know, dev kits, at the end of the day, dev kits are simply dev kits, and you know, it's nice to know if something is out there, but the problem is there's no way for anyone to confirm or deny this statement, because Mercury Steam's not going to say shit either way because they're under an NDA. Anyone who would have a perceivable dev kit would have an NDA. So with that being said, none of these companies would say anything. Yeah, you might get a low-level employee risking their job, sure, but this early in the stages of things, if, like I said, it is indeed a thing, I don't think it really matters all that much. And, like, yeah, I guess you can get hyped about it, but I don't think it matters in the grand scheme of things really at all. Nate, what do you know, or what have you heard?
This is a topic of conversation that one really has to approach with some nuance, because there are many layers to it. On the surface, you can say, okay, we have a report or a rumor that's coming out that suggests that a development studio located in Spain is in possession of a Switch 2 development kit. Now, there's nothing there that inherently screams fake or true. Given the timeline and the expectation of hardware, depending on who you ask, you have some still anticipating that the Switch 2 is coming out later this year. You have others believe it will come out this fiscal year, but will launch in the early portion of 2024, while my informed speculation is that it will come out in the holiday of 2024. So now if we use all of those time frames, we're looking at anywhere between the next 4 to 16 months. And all of that would fit in that general window of when near finalized development kits would fall into the hands of development partners. So this is kind of one of those bits of information that, could it be accurate? Yes. Could it be fake and it's just a safe guess? Also yes. And it's really hard to discern what exactly this information is at the moment. And as you said, it's not as though the studio who is in possession of it can come out and confirm it, nor that can they come out and deny it. And right now the belief is that it could be Mercury System because they are located in Spain, and that's largely speculation on the internet's behalf. Now let's say it is them. You made Metroid Dread. The odds of them making another Metroid game for Nintendo are fairly high. So if you're Nintendo, you definitely want a partner like them to have early access to near finalized silicon of your upcoming system as soon as you can get it to them, so they can begin to develop the game for that platform and make sure you're using all the features that the hardware will introduce when it comes to market, whenever that time is. Now, my hesitation with the information is that it's only been mentioned by one account. There's been no real further backing of it. Yes, there was a Brazilian journalist who has said that they have been able to independently verify this information, but we haven't seen an expansion on that. We haven't had mentions of, oh, there's other studios in Europe who have the dev kit, or there's other partners in Japan, North America, and other regions that have had access to this. And that brings me just a little bit of pause. But it goes back to that first point. We're well within the window of development studios likely getting access to dev kits for this new hardware. And with Gamescom and Tokyo Game Show coming up in just a couple of months, I do suspect we will begin to see leaks and reports come out as the year advances. Probably around September, I wouldn't be too surprised if you see a report from a major outlet be published, only because with Tokyo Game Show, it's an industry event. You're going to have a lot of companies in person meeting with people. Business meetings will be taking place with Nintendo and partners. So if there's information that is circulating in the industry, that chatter is going to become quite significant and loud. And that will lead to leaks and conversations between development partners, journalists, and such. And you'll likely get a report out around then, as long as the development kit distribution has hit a high point. If it's still very limited and only to select partners, they may be a bit cautious to run a report, only because the amount of people with access is going to be the few, which means Nintendo could easily trace that information. So right now, I think the claim itself, I approach with some caution, but the possibility of it being accurate, I do think weighs on the higher end of things, but strictly due to that time frame. So it's one of those things you kind of have to take it for what it's worth, but look at how the industry works and say, this is well within reason, even if the information itself may not be 100% accurate.
Yeah, that's kind of my thing. One of my hesitations is everyone's like, oh, well, he said Metroid Dread, and that no one expected Metroid Dread. It's like, oh, really? Because, I mean, how long were there rumors that a 2D Metroid was in development for the Switch? Metroid Dread isn't exactly a brand new title that hasn't been thrown around since the, Nintendo DS era. Oh, wait, it was. That's been a thing since the DS. So to me, that just, like, yes, it was, yes, technically he was correct, but it feels like a very safe guess. You know what I'm saying? And then let's say the 2D Metroid does come out and then it wasn't named Metroid Dread. Oh, well, that was the code name for it. That was the code name for it. They changed it at the last minute, and then you still save face. So that's kind of one of my hesitations with it. But yeah, you're right. Like, there's no way to confirm nor deny it, so you can only speculate on it. And
right,
sure, like I think a lot of us are anticipating a 2024 thing, but I have to ask, why did that mean July?
That's been a question that's been baffling me now for the last several weeks, where everyone's been holding on to this belief that this has to be announced in July. And I think it just comes back to when Jeff Grubb had just mentioned that he was hearing at the time that there was going to be nothing in June in terms of a direct, but there was that possibility of maybe something Nintendo related in July. And I think people are clinging to that piece of information as, oh, something's coming in July because Grubb had mentioned that. And I think it's just a situation of maybe Grubb's source at the time had confused June and July for the direct, and they just got the information wrong. So instead of holding on to maybe something's coming in July for hardware, maybe it just comes down to the simple fact of his contact was wrong about the timing of the direct, and in fact it took place in June and not July, and nothing is coming in July in terms of a major presentation from Nintendo. And that's not me saying that there will not be anything. There could be. I'm just saying that it feels as though the expectation of July may lie and rest with that bit of information, because otherwise the only thing that's happened in July is, yeah, a couple of years ago, the OLED was announced in July. So maybe people are thinking Nintendo is going to repeat that cycle and announce brand new hardware in July because they had done it in the past with a minor revision. But there's really nothing to suggest at the moment that Nintendo is preparing a major new hardware announcement this month.
That kind of parlays into my next question. On a scale of 1 to 100, what do you think the probability is of them of this potentially still coming out this year, based on what we saw at the Direct, the type of software that we saw at that presentation? 1 to 100, where are we standing on the system coming out this year? I'm at 5%.
Yeah, I'll get you there with like a 7.
This year, I come in at 0.
Oh, wow. 0. Yeah, I mean, it's so bizarre to me to see all these videos pop up. Even still to this day, it's like, oh, 2023 still on the table. Gamescom. It could be a game. When was the last time like anything happened at Gamescom? Like,
Nintendo doesn't even show software there. Hardware is crazy.
Yeah, like I don't get it. I understand the OLED, but that was in a different world. That was in a pandemic world. Everything was very different around those times. I just don't foresee a company saying we're not doing anything this year. And they have lied before. That's well documented. But we're talking to shareholders here. You know, lying to IGN like Reggie did about the new 3DS XL and the next day it was announced. That's a little bit different than lying to your shareholders who, you know, they'll want your head for that sort of situation. So it's obviously it's not going to stop anytime soon. I've already have people asking me to make another disease video, but this time about this, but it's just like, I don't know. It's so crazy. And then of course, we had an update to this whole thing where supposedly on the Nintendo developers back end, there was an update to the systems that you can, develop games for, and NX2 was above Nintendo Switch. There's an image floating around about this, and so many people fell for it without using their brain, because we know that the Nintendo Switch was codenamed the Nintendo NX. So I guess going on the assumption that this is the Switch 2, which they haven't done a direct real successor, but that's a topic for another day. But that's the mindset, is that it's a Switch 2, so it's the NX2. So this has to be real. Even though every single Nintendo system has always had a different code name. Dolphin, Revolution, all these different names. But now all of a sudden they're going in alphabetical, just sequencing and just throwing a 2 on the end of it. What do we think about this image and this information that's floating out there?
I think it's crazy. Anyone can come up with the NX2. That's not a special name to come up with. And like you said, Nintendo's always had those code names, and I really don't think that even the Switch is going to, like the next whatever successor it is, I really doubt that it's going to be a numbered system. They've stayed away from that for all of their history, like ever. So it just fully doesn't make any sense to me, and I think it's just some guy got creative with Photoshop. I don't think it's something crazy.
Yeah, the image is something that you can easily recreate with Inspect on like Google Chrome. And there was really nothing about the image that I would look at and say, wow, this has to be real. There was no context provided. There was no source provided as to the origin of the image. It wasn't as though this was presented with a backstory that would be able to give you some benefit of doubt that maybe it's legit. It's just an image devoid of context, and people took it and run. And it kind of reminds me of, the dev kit claim itself. When you have nothing to lose, you can make any claim you want, because maybe people aren't going to take you seriously. But if it sticks, then you get that attention. But if it doesn't stick, nobody's going to remember you made the claim. So when you have nothing to lose, you can say anything and then come back to it and say, oh, look, I was right. And then people pay attention to you. And that's what this image kind of was saying to me. It just didn't have anyone to attach to at the moment. But isn't the timing a little bit convenient that as soon as you have a claim of a Spanish studio having a development kit, all of a sudden this image just appears online randomly?
Well, no, I mean, obviously, it's just someone trying to, roll on the hype wagon of potential misinformation by having their own misinformation because, eventually people because let's say something happens. Okay, well then I'm right. Let's say nothing happens. Well, that's okay. Everyone's going to forget about it. You know what I'm saying? Like you said, there's really nothing to lose, but yeah, I think the whole thing is just, I think it's completely fake. There's nothing to lead me to believe that it would be real. So, and why has nobody, and much like the story of the dev kit, why has nobody come out and, collaborated with it and said, okay, yeah, this is the thing. I also saw this too. I heard this too. Like, this is the one person in the entire world who happened to see it at the right time. And so, yeah, it has to be real. Like, no, that doesn't make any sense.
Right. And that'd be one of the things, a journalist out there, be it whoever, Jason Schreier, IGN, GameSpot, Game Informer, Eurogamer, whomever you choose, would be able to get in contact with some of their development sources and say, hey, is this appearing for you on the development portal site? And easily come out and say, okay, now we got a report. They are seeing it, so we can confirm this. It's one of those things that it's not really worth them coming out to deconfirm because it's ultimately nothing. If the rumor is nothing, you're not going to make a report to say what you saw is nothing. So people will say, well, how come they haven't deconfirmed it? Because there's nothing to deconfirm.
Right. It boils the person making the claim should be the one having to prove the claim, not someone to come along and deny the claim. Like you made the claim, you made this a thing. It's your responsibility.
Right. The burden of proof is on whoever created the image or shared the image.
And a lot of times I feel like these have to be corroborated in order to take them seriously. Like, it's the same with a Nintendo Direct. A Nintendo Direct gets leaked, then a couple people confirm it, and then you'll take it more seriously because that's consistent information that a few different sources have. But like you guys said, coming from one person and something as easily made up as NX2 holds not a lot of weight, in my opinion.
Right. And I mean, I guess that kind of circles around to the final thing I wanted to talk about. NX2, the whole assumption of this system is that it's going to be, I mean, because if you hear the name NX2, you would assume what? It's another Switch, but more powerful. And that seems to be the strongest assumption that everyone has with this system. Even though, if you look for clues and context, Nintendo always likes to use the word unique. And, we want a unique gaming experience. So I ask the esteemed panel this. Do we think that this is indeed going to be the system that everyone claims they want? Just a stronger system with full backwards compatibility? Or do we think it's a brand new idea, a brand new concept?
I think you can do brand new idea, brand new concept, like from the DS to 3DS, and I see something like that happening where it stays similar form factor wise, but there's some brand new big gimmick, and I don't think there's any way that it is a Nintendo Switch that's just